Could your breakfast be causing you to feel anxious or tired? It's very possible. If your breakfast is giving you what's called a blood sugar spike, it could be driving a lot of negative feelings afterwards. What is a blood sugar spike? When we eat a lot of carbohydrates, the amount of sugar in our blood starts to go up, and this can give us a lot of energy and feel good for a period of time. But then we get a release of this hormone called insulin, which takes the sugar out of the blood and puts it into the cells to use, and so it lowers our blood sugar. When our blood sugar is going too low or on the way down, it can start to feel really bad if it's crashing too fast. So what we can start to feel is feeling dizzy, shaky, anxious, hangry, irritable, brain fog, heart palpitations, headaches, and then it starts to drive a lot of hunger. This could be why after you eat breakfast, you feel okay for a period of time, but then your energy starts tanking. You need another coffee. You start to feel irritable or bothered by what your boss or coworkers are doing. This is very, very common when we get a spike of blood sugar from our breakfast. So what is a good breakfast for our blood sugar, and what do we want to avoid? We want to focus on having lots of proteins and healthy fats because this will keep our blood sugar stable, which will help us feel energized and also feel full until our next meal. So what's enough protein? At each meal, we want to think about having about 30 grams of protein if you're a female and about 50 grams for a male, but this will change depending on your individual needs, but that's a really great starting point. So loading up on these proteins is a really good first step. Personally, I recommend proteins like eggs, which be careful, they only have 6 grams of protein each, so 2 eggs is not enough protein for breakfast. I also like having lots of healthy red meat, chicken, turkey, pork, and other animal proteins like fish. In terms of healthy fats, we can get a lot of fat from the meat that we eat. We can also have butter, olive oil, we can have avocados, olives, coconuts, and things like this. Some nuts and seeds can be okay, but don't have too many. Those are really easy to overdo. We want to base our meals around this and then also add a lot of healthy fiber coming from non-starchy vegetables like things like greens, peppers, cucumbers, zucchini, mushrooms, tomatoes, foods like this. These can provide fiber, which also actually help to lower the blood sugar response from food. And what I do for breakfast is I eat what I would eat at lunch or dinner. I always call this an advanced concept because you don't really wake up in the mood for like steak and peppers, right? But these are really, really easy ways to get in lots of healthy proteins, fats, and fiber. Oftentimes, I just heat up leftovers, which is the fastest breakfast you can get. So we want to think outside of the box. We don't want to rely on those ones that are only the ones that are marketed to be breakfasty. So you might say, Dani, why would I eat vegetables in the morning? A lot of breakfast foods are actually really terrible for our blood sugar. Even the ones that are marketed as healthy, the ones that I used to eat, things like acai bowls, smoothies, oatmeal, even avocado toast has almost no protein in it. So that wouldn't be the best choice for our blood sugar. We also don't want to have these traditional breakfast foods that are highly processed, things like cereal, French toast, pancakes, Eggo waffles. These are like all my childhood foods that I used to eat all the time, and they're really, really bad for our blood sugar. We want to avoid processed carbohydrates or an overabundance of carbohydrates at breakfast. If you are eating carbs at breakfast, which some of us can certainly do well with some carbohydrates, we want to make sure we're eating those last on our plate because by eating the proteins, fats, and fiber first, we actually slow the release of the sugar into our system, which helps us not have such a big blood sugar spike. And the name of the game is keeping our blood sugar stable and not having these big highs and lows. That's what helps us feel good in our body. So to sum up, we want a breakfast that's loaded with protein and healthy fats. It can also have some fiber and maybe some whole food carbohydrates at the end of the meal, like fruit or sweet potato or something like that. We also want to avoid foods that are going to cause these big spikes in our blood sugar and be devoid of these proteins and healthy fats because that's going to drive us to feel hungry and maybe symptomatic like anxious or irritable later on. We also want to avoid skipping breakfast because we don't want to cause our body to be running on stress hormones all morning. Even having just coffee in the morning, that's also going to spike our cortisol. It's also going to suppress our appetite. And then we're going to end up eating later in the day when our insulin doesn't work as well. So that means our blood sugar is going to spike higher and longer. It's also likely that eating later in the day is going to have negative impacts on our sleep as well. And if you want to do intermittent fasting, I recommend intermittent fasting at the end of the day, so make sure you get up and eat a breakfast within an hour of waking for best results for your blood sugar. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you like and subscribe and leave a comment below with your favorite breakfast.